This is the Culture Goodr podcast. In the context of, the workplace, what does culture mean to you?
I think culture is the way you do your work. It's not the fun stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the pizza parties after work. It's how your company has agreed to do the work.
Yeah.
It's the values, it's the behaviors, it's in the little things. That's where your culture is.
Welcome to the Culture Goodr podcast with Stephen Leese and Sean Tinney. This podcast is a behind the shades look at creating and changing culture inside of Goodr sunglasses. You can live with the status quo, you can challenge the status quo, or you can do what we do at Goodr and status the quo challenge.
Yo, you're listening to a 6-part series where I interview all of our department heads. At Goodr, we call our department heads Flock Stars. Enjoy. We have a very special guest with us today. My good friend, colleague, and fitness mentor, Nicole Sedmak. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you.
Nicole is a flock star. She's the leader of our people herd, and she's known to the outside world as our chief people officer. So before we get into more about Nicole's team and what she does here, Nicole, tell us an interesting story about you growing up that led to the person you are today.
What to choose from? So I would say, I'm Gen X. And also the oldest of 3 kids. So quite literally, I would leave the house in the morning and my parents had no idea where I was all day long, which is wild to think about now. But taught me very early on to take risks and take challenges, and change didn't scare me. I moved a lot as a child. So I think that formed a big part of my personality for sure.
You're the oldest of 3?
Oldest of 3, yeah.
What's the age difference?
Sister is 2 years younger. Brother is 7 years younger.
Yeah. Do you think that being the oldest led to, how did that affect who you are right now?
It's funny, we just had a conversation about responsibility, but I had a lot of responsibility at a very young age. And so I just feel like that formed that part of me about, leadership and taking on things that might seem scary, but you can figure it out.
Yeah. I'm the youngest, and everybody always thinks the youngest gets it the easiest. And I would say how that affected me is my parents, they had 2 tribes before me, and so they were way less concerned about what I was doing. So for sure, I also had a lot of freedom. And I would say it kind of was reversed, where I had to have a lot of personal responsibility because I was the youngest, because my parents by that point, they were like, we're done. Yeah, we're done. You're good. You don't need a babysitter.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about your role here at Goodr. Like, what's your lame title? What's your fun title? Your department name? What's your primary focus? What do you oversee? Give it to us.
Okay. So like you said in the intro, I'm the chief people officer. That's my lame title. I run the people herd. Fun title, Chief of the Flamingos. And the primary focus, so I could say our 1-year remarkable vision is people powers activated. And I should probably give some context. That comes from the fact that a year ago, we were a team of 5 and now we're a team of 15.
Yeah.
So we've put a lot of work into creating the teams, creating the herd, building our foundation. And now we want to activate and see what we can do to achieve our very ambitious goals that we have set for ourselves. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah. Tell us about the different teams that you oversee in the people herd.
Yeah. So I oversee 3 flocks. First one is called Help Desk, which is HR, legal, IT. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's kind of hodgepodge.
Yeah, it's kind of a hodgepodge, but it works. The second team is called Goodr University. It is our learning and development team. And super excited for what that team is going to do this year. And then the last team is Guardians. I would say they're what we call kind of our experience team. They do a lot of our internal connection events, and then we've got some fun external culture events that are in the works as well that team is in charge of.
Yeah. So what's your day-to-day like? I'm sure it's different, but how would you describe it?
Day-to-day is very different, I think, from other flock stars here, because I don't have a lot of recurring meetings. That just isn't a thing as much for me as it seems to be for other flock stars. But somehow my Tuesdays and Thursdays still completely get filled up. So it tends to be more things that come up all of a sudden that I have to meet about. So they are meetings, but it really does vary. Wednesday, Fridays are in-depth productive thinking time. Also a lot of working sessions, which I foresee a lot of those in my future with our goals that we have set for us this year. But that's okay. I love those. Gets a lot of work done.
How much of your job is reactive versus proactive?
Less now that I'm no longer acting as flock leader of HR.
Yeah, that role is, I feel, inherently always reactive to some degree.
Yeah, I would agree. Much less now that we have that a flock leader for that position.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been getting into now more is being proactive.
So what's the funnest part about your role right now, and what's the hardest part?
I think just that, stepping into a fully flock star only position, that's different for me. I've been doing double duty and just recently got out of that. So I'm really enjoying kind of figuring out what that means for me, and also not having to be so reactive.
Yeah. What is transitioning from flock leader to flock star, right? A lot of people here, or 5 people here, have done it good over the past year. What has been your biggest aha moment in this transition? I mean, it's actually fairly new that you're finally fully out of leading a flock.
Yeah. I feel like now I have the space to go deep on the things that I need to really think about. And before I just had to get it done. And it's really enjoyable to be able to have that time and that space to do that kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, what I love what you just said is we're actively as a company working to create more space for people.
Yeah.
But sometimes your role for this season, and I think a lot of times jobs have seasons. Sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's a quarter, sometimes it's a year. And your season for a while has been you get it done. Fast growing company.
Yeah.
How is the uncertainty of moving from get it done drinking through a garden hose to being like, oh, I don't have to drink through a garden hose?
It is a challenge. It really is, to slow down a little bit in order to speed up.
Yeah.
It's that whole thing. And it definitely leaves you a bit like, well, if I don't have to do all of this stuff, am I of any use?
Yeah.
But then very quickly it works itself out.
Yeah, it does. But it is a hard growing pain, I think, that most leaders go through, of going from proving yourself, reacting, get it done, to, oh, I don't have to do this, but I have to take a deep breath and live in the uncertainty.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I've felt it a goodr once we got more and more resources being like, Steven, you don't have to do everything. It's tough.
Yeah, it is. It's very challenging.
So you spent a lot of your life being a personal trainer, coach, nutritionist. How has that benefited you in your current role?
I mean, I was Coach Nicole back then, and I still think I'm Coach Nicole.
Yeah, for sure.
Just in a very different context.
Yeah.
But I actually had that moment not too long ago where I realized someone a while back was like, you're always going to be a coach though, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, they were right. I still am a coach.
Yeah.
So I think it's very similar, actually, even though maybe it doesn't seem that way on paper.
Talk about, on this note, goodr life and what that is for our listeners out there, and why you love it so much here at goodr.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorites. So goodr life is kind of our wellness program, for lack of a better word, although I hate that terminology. But in our weekly all hands meeting called TWC, we have a section called goodr OS, and there's different tips that happen during that time. And I'm responsible for doing a goodr life tip, which is what I call the wellness program. And so it varies anything from nutrition to working out to mental health. And it brings me so much joy that I get to bring that part of me to work. And, I get a lot of feedback from people who come to me asking me questions, how it's changed their life, the things that they have done because of something I said. And it just it's a great feeling to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, it's pretty wonderful when I watch you at our weekly staff meetings talk about goodr life and bringing things up that I don't think conceptually a lot of people are actually thinking about in their everyday life, that you may think it's, you know how bad sugar is.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't. So what's your decision matrix for, pulling out of the mind of what Nicole knows and trying to approach what maybe the masses might need to know?
Yeah, I have to be very careful because I don't ever want people to think, number one, that I'm judging them, and number two, that I know the right way to do anything, because that's truly not what I'm trying to do. What I've tried to create is that I am giving you information so that you can make a choice.
Yeah.
And as long as you have the information and you're making a choice mindfully, cool.
Yeah.
You do you. But things like, alcohol is poison, right? That is like becoming a meme, I think, for me. I'll never live that one down, but I stand by it. It is poison. Like, I'm not saying don't drink. That is not the point of what I'm talking about. So really, I approach it from giving you information, because a lot of us, all of us, are consuming food or drinks or anything mindlessly.
Yeah.
So it's really that.
I love this thing I'll do around here. I'll be like, hey, Nicole, validate this snack or validate this meal. I have a salad with this and that. You're like that's a good one. Or that's not good.
Yeah.
I need Nicole's validation. What's a small obscure thing you love about goodr?
I mean, I could think of so many. Well, in this realm, I love that we have people working out in the office. We have a workout space, and it's called Carl's Backyard. And me and you and Mountain, our COO, started this during the pandemic because we couldn't work out anywhere else. Yeah. And it's caught on, and now there's a whole team, and they've just switched up the schedule, and they're doing workouts at different times. But it brought me so much joy leaving the other day and seeing that whole group working out at like six or seven new people.
Yeah.
I think that's just really, really cool.
I think what's really cool about it is we started it and, you were working out on a different schedule, but to see the torch be passed on is actually incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
Why do you hate the word wellness?
I think it's been overused.
Yeah.
And I think now people kind of roll their eyes at it, which I do. So that's why I think it's just overused at this point.
Yeah. All right. So shifting gears, at one point in the world, or at one point you were the second highest savate fighter in the world, which is French kickboxing?
Yep.
All right. So what did you learn there to help you be a better leader? And also could you just give a 30-second on what savate is, so for our listeners?
Yeah. So, I mean, you said the important thing to know is that it's French kickboxing.
Yeah.
It is called the ballet of the kickboxing world. Very pretty. It's with your toes. They have two forms, which is full contact, light contact. And I started doing it when I moved to Los Angeles. Immediately was learning from a French fighter. So someone who, had it in their bones. And just loved it right away. And so, I think that experience, really what a lot of my physical experiences have shown me is that humans are capable of more than they have any idea of achieving. Truly, truly. You can do anything as long as you put in the work. And that's really the part that you have to add on. That's really important. You've got to do the work.
Yeah.
But you can fucking do anything you put your mind to.
Yeah. I remember one time, and I don't remember the context of why I asked you this question, but we were trying to solve a problem at goodr and the problem of like motivating people. And I go, Nicole, what would you say to somebody back in your training days if they wanted to get fit but aren't showing up for the workouts? And you said something like, I would tell them, your actions are not your actions are not meeting what your expectations are.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting thing. Wanting and doing are two completely separate things.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you motivate yourself from wanting to doing?
It's consistency. It's you do it no matter what.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. And we all have days where we wake up and the last thing I want to do is go work out, but I do it because I know at the end of the workout, I'm going to feel 100 times better. And that's from consistency. And so you just do it. There's just, like I said the other day, one of my goodr life tips, there are no tricks.
Yeah.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
That's it.
On that note, I remember laughing about a presentation where there's a photograph of me when I was running, training for a 100-mile race, and I was probably 20 pounds lighter than I am now. And I remember saying, Nicole, look at this, like how to get back to that weight. And you go, do you want to run 50 miles a week again? And I was like, no, I don't. You're like, well, I don't. Then I think that guy's gone.
Yeah.
Which is, that guy's gone.
Yeah.
He's left. So I love the goal of hiring the fewest amount of people coached to the highest level. Can you explain where that came from?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think Sean came up with it. It was during PDA last year when we were working on vision for the first time. And it was in our conversation with myself, Sean, and Savannah at the time. And so it was a conversation, but I think Sean is the one that said, so what we're saying is hire the fewest number of people, coach the highest level.
Yeah.
And all of us were like, yes, that's exactly what we're saying.
Yeah. I mean, for our listeners out there, right? So we want to hire the fewest amount of people, coach to the highest level. And one thing that scares me to death about our rapid growth is not getting overstaffed, because you can stop buying product. You can stop spending on media. If you need to stop on payroll, then you need to let people go, which is really hard. What kind of motivates you to make sure we have the fewest people coach to the highest level?
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. We've gone through that experience at the top of COVID, right? When we just didn't know what was going to happen, and laying people off is really a terrible experience. And I just don't want to go through that. And you see that time and time again in these stories of other companies that the Flock Stars have looked into, the Falling Star. And a lot of the times it's because they took their eye off their headcount, and their headcount got out of control. And that's a huge line item. And that's also a thought, like, we're not going to let goodr go down because we hired too many people.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, I also think it holds us responsible to be better leaders.
Oh, yeah.
And get more out of people.
Yeah, for sure.
On that note, we used to use revenue per employee. So for our listeners out there, you take your revenue, you divide it by your head count. That's revenue per employee. So if you are a $10 million company, you have 10 people, that's $1 million revenue per employee, which is a great number. But we actually switched over the past year to profit per employee. So same type of thing. What's your profit at the end of the year? And you divide that. And ours is considerably high.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's so high? Because you've done the research on it.
Yeah. So when we first started talking about this, we had set a RPE goal, and I just said, okay, so what's our PPE goal based on this? Not having done anything with PPE up until that point. And so I got that number and then did research around it, and I was like, wow, we're already doing quite well.
Yeah.
And I think because we were already running lean, we've always run lean. And I think we fell into that at first, like most things.
Yeah.
We got very lucky.
Yeah.
And now we're intentional about it.
Yeah. At first we just didn't have the resources, so we ran lean. And now we're like, well, running lean serves some major benefits. Yeah, it works. What does integrity mean to you, and why is it so important?
Yeah, it's one of my core values, so it is very important to me. To me, it's being true to your word, being true to your morals and your ethics. And in my opinion, why it's my core one of my core values is if you are not true to your word, then you have nothing.
Yeah.
It's of the utmost importance to me.
Where do you feel it when you feel like your integrity getting pushed up against? Do you feel like in your body?
Oh, yeah, I feel it in my body.
Yeah.
I feel it in my chest and in my gut.
Yeah. Oh, man, always trust your gut.
Yeah, always. That's why my autobiographical title was Go With Your Gut.
That's right. And I think, too, it's even okay to be like, it's okay to say, like, something's off. I don't know what's off, but something is off.
And so that's why intuition and integrity for me, like those two things very much go together for me.
Yeah. We've talked about trying to teach people to like follow their gut. I mean, we obviously haven't really went down that path, but any idea of how we would try and teach that? Because it is a really important skill set that I think a lot of people don't trust themselves with, to trust their gut.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's twofold, right? It's really important to trust yourself, and then also to understand that feelings aren't facts.
Yeah.
Right? So it does take some wisdom to really understand those two divergent ideas. And then also you're going to make some mistakes along the way, and you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And hopefully you figure it out from your mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's very challenging to teach that.
For sure.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of time right now on Mind the Wage Gap. So tell our audience what that is and why you believe it's so important to our culture.
Yeah, it's our compensation system. And first and foremost, it is completely transparent.
Yeah.
And that was something that, you put a lot of work into a couple of years ago that we created in order to address systemic pay issues.
Yeah.
And then also address, some people are really good at negotiating and that doesn't really seem fair. And so we addressed a lot of issues with it when we first rolled it out. And it's also how you establish trust in your organization, and trust is everything.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to understand their pay system. They want to feel that they're being compensated fairly, that the company cares about them. And when you keep that silent, there's distrust inherently in that action.
Yeah.
So, it's all in the news right now because of these transparency pay laws in California and New York. And it's messy right now, what everyone's doing. But it's just really, really important.
Yeah. We spent 3 hours this morning just in a working session.
Yeah.
And right now, we acknowledge it's not a perfect system. There are still holes in it. What are we trying to fix right now with it?
So what we've realized we don't have is a clear path on how you move through our tiers.
Yeah.
We establish the tiers, we establish salary bands. The entire company understands where they are at. But what we didn't address is, okay, if you are in tier 1 and you want to move to tier 2, what does that look like?
Yeah.
What does that mean? So that's what we're going to do now.
Yeah. It's fun, and I love that type of work.
Yeah.
And it's actually some of the hardest work we do because it is not an exact science. Like 4 + 4 doesn't equal 8. Like we have to trust our gut a lot on this.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And that's, you can go down a dark, dark hole. And when you start working on this stuff. Yeah.
This morning you came into my office and you're like, hey, I'm really nervous about this working session today.
Yeah.
Say more about why that was.
Well, first and foremost, what I realized is that I had kind of kept you away from the work that myself and Katrine had been doing, which was we tend to work very closely with one another on these things, but I purposefully kind of said, no, I don't want you to know what we're working on until we present it to you. And there's this moment that I had last night where I was like, oh God, what if he hates this? we put a lot of work into this. And if he's like, what the fuck? That's going to be kind of heartbreaking. But so I was just decided that I was going to tell you that so that I got that out of my head so that I went into the working session without that fear in the back of my brain.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
But what came out of it was a lot of work for Nicole.
Oh, yeah.
Which you knew.
I knew.
It wasn't a surprise.
No.
So this is the Culture Goodr podcast. In the context of, the workplace, what does culture mean to you?
I think culture is the way you do your work. It's not the fun stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the pizza parties after work. It's how your company has agreed to do the work.
Yeah.
It's the values, it's the behaviors, it's in the little things. That's where your culture is.
Yeah, right. We've talked about this recently it's a hard thing for people to understand because culture is not a concrete thing. And most people they go to is, oh, how's culture goodr? Oh, great. We have goodr stock. And it's like, that's not really our culture.
Yeah.
How would you describe our culture to the outside world?
I think we have a lot of high achievers. I think we have people who have very open-minded growth mindset for sure. And just really kind, generous, good people. Yeah. Yeah. The driven, kind, and courageous is like, if I was just to pull 3 words. Yeah. Courageous. I like that word a lot. Oh, we value feedback here at goodr. Give me some feedback on something I can be better at. Damn it. I didn't see this one. Put me on the spot. Ooh, okay. I can think of something. Let's do it. So Lumapaloozas. Yeah. Yeah. You had some yesterday. Yeah. But I can't think of one specifically from yesterday, but I would say sometimes maybe the ease of recording a loom. Yeah. Leads you to spin out a little bit. For sure. So, which causes us to spin out, right? When you get a loom from Steven, your adrenaline goes boop, through, oh God. So maybe that reflection to anchor it more in NASA in some insights and get clear on what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah. And when you say spin out, like I go off on a tangent, or
sometimes you do. And then because you're not clear, you're not wholly aware of the point you're trying to make. We are left uncertain. And then we start having conversations back, like, what's going on? Are we in trouble?
Yeah.
Like,
That's funny. 100% accurate. Yes. Yesterday, what's funny is, I think 3 of the ones I said, I go, all right, I'm gonna do this in 90 seconds.
Yeah,
because
I saw that one.
The one thing I realize is, if you give me unlimited time, I'm just gonna fill it up with garbage. And so I need, at 90 seconds, I need to get pointed really, really quickly.
I mean, nothing will ever beat your 20-minute loom to the flock leaders.
Well, that was a punishment for that's on Hansi.
Yeah.
So for our listeners out there, Loom is a recording system. You can do screen records. A lot of times I just look in the camera, and it's an easy way for me to give feedback. We actually just did a podcast about it. But the other, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, I went in to do a Loom to explain how I wanted a deck filled out, and the formatting was not done correctly. And so usually I would stop at that point, fix it, and re-record. And it was the end of the day, and I was done. I was like, well, now everybody has to watch me fix this formatting because it didn't get done. And it was 20 minutes, right?
20 minutes.
I mean, it was a painful experience.
Yes.
All right. We're doing in with a lightning round here.
Okay.
All right, here we go. If I could wave the magic wand and change one thing at goodr, what would it be?
The temperature issues.
Oh, I mean, we had somebody here today. I think
it's
a lot nicer.
It's a lot nicer.
Didn't even need a wand for that one.
I know.
But you want to redo?
I mean, we still have temperature issues out there.
That's fair.
Yeah.
How have you challenged the status quo lately?
I think what we presented to you today. I think staying true to the roots of Mind the Wage Gap, staying transparent. And also, there's a lot of information out there about compensation systems and salary bands, and it gets very, very complicated very quickly. And our philosophy is keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
And so that's how we're challenging the status quo. We're not going to add complexity just because that's the way it's been done.
Yeah.
But still provide that growth path. So that's how we're trying to fix that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Tell me about a recent fuck up and how you owned it and fixed it.
I gave feedback to someone in a manner that worked for me, but did not work for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to keep that in mind when you're giving feedback. And so, I hurt their feelings, and I certainly did not mean to do that. So I apologized.
Yeah. And then moving forward, do you have a better grasp on how you will give that feedback?
I think for me, it's I can get to the feedback place where I'm like ready to give feedback very quickly.
Yeah.
And I need to take a beat.
Yeah.
I need to like pause a little bit and not get there so fast.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. Actually, I love how this lightning round is not turning into lightning, which I don't care. On that note, right, I think both things are true. Like, believe in radical candor, like giving stuff as quickly as possible is important. So how do we, and also I think you need to sometimes think also the more you do something, the better you get at it. So how do we get better at this thing?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer either.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I mean, I also think it's that positive intent, right? That's hard. It's hard for me to pause and think, like, assume positive intent.
Yeah.
Right. Assume that they're doing a really good job.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah.
And then give the feedback with that in your head.
Oh man. What just went through my mind is it would have to be personalized, but all right, what's getting in the way of you giving, good feedback quickly? And so it might be, I mean, for sure, positive intent.
Yeah.
This, and so it's almost like, all right, I'm gonna be candid with you. Positive intent, right?
Yeah.
Like, all right, I'm gonna come positive intent. I'm gonna be clear. I'm gonna be direct. Okay, I'm back in.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think that's not a bad way to go.
And everyone would have their own whatever it was.
Yeah, would have their own version of be 10 times more direct than you think you're being.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What's a project at goodr that excites you the most right now that we didn't talk about?
I think, I said this on stage yesterday. God, that seems like forever ago already. new office initiative.
Oh, yeah.
That and also I don't know if we want to talk about it, but some of the things that are coming up for Guardians and Culture Gooder, I'm super excited about.
Oh, you know about it?
Yeah, the Culture Conference.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that. That's, still a long ways away, but that's exciting to me.
What about the new office? Why does that excite you so much?
I love fixing up spaces. I love, decorating. I know you do too, but I like that whole aspect of setting up an office and also just giving ourselves an even cooler place to work.
Yeah. And I said new office, it's actually a second office.
Second office, yeah.
And then Culture Conference, what are you, for our listeners out there, I'm sure I've talked about this before, but we are planning on hosting annual culture conferences starting in 2024.
Yep.
Where we bring people in and teach them about our culture. A lot of things that we've talked about on this podcast, we would do a workshop on Mind the Wage Gap.
Yeah.
So why do you think this is so important in the world?
We hear all the time, outside companies, Land of Lakes, reaching out to me and wanting to do a session with me to talk to me about the way that we do things. We do things very differently, and people are very interested in like, okay, so how would I do this here? And I can't answer that question in 10 minutes, but I just think we have so much value to bring, and we also love just getting feedback from them about stuff. So I feel like we get a lot of feedback at the same time. So that'd be great. Yeah,
you do. You do learn from each other.
Yeah.
What's something that excites you right now in your everyday life that's not gooder?
Ooh, science of longevity.
You do talk about this a lot.
I talk about it a lot. Yeah. Lifespan, health span. I have got my podcasts that I listen to. I talk about it all the time. I love it.
And then, all right, last one. What are you most proud of from your time here at Goodr?
Probably our hiring and onboarding process.
Because?
Through this, we have brought in amazing humans that are just a joy to work with. And I'm really, really just love everybody that works here. So
yeah, it's very validating when you have people come in from the outside world and talk up what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of get to be the first line of defense with that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, listeners.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Gooder podcast. To submit questions for the podcast, learn more about our culture, and learn how you can status the quote challenge, head over to goodr.com/culture. And don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you're listening, including on YouTube, where you can now watch all of our new episodes. Who knows? You might even catch a glimpse of Carl at our headquarters if he's not already passed out at the tiki bar from all the margaritas.